What's up, Eagles Nation? Welcome to Week 4 of the 2018-19 NFL season. Of course, our Eagles come in 2-1, so that the Tennessee Titans, the team that they'll be playing this week in Nashville. Listen, quick points about this game. Obviously, the Eagles, it looks like their health is getting a little better. They will be getting... it seems, at least, we'll see come Sunday, but it seems like they'll be getting Jay Ajayi, Darren Sproles, and Alshon Jeffrey back, which is good. Of course, more offensive weapons for number 11 to have. Of course, he looked pretty good last week in his return. That's certainly good. We've all kind of, looked at this season so far, looked at the offense, and kind of say, all right, guys, when are we going to get it going here? But they've had a lot of injuries, and I know they had injuries last year. We all know this, but they've had a lot of injuries on the offensive side of the ball to some key players and key spots. If Jeffrey does come in and play this Sunday, it's his first action of the season. And, of course, Jay Ajayi and Darren Sproles will return after missing a few games or 1 or 2 games each. So that's certainly good. That helps the offense. And, look, they ran the ball really well last week, over 150 yards and a touchdown between the running game last week. That was good to see. Wendell Smallwood getting in. Look, they're very deep at running back, and you can see that last week when you had the backs that they did helping to get a win. Offensively, to get those weapons back is good. Look, Tennessee has a pretty good defense, and you win a game 9-6 a week ago, and it was against Jacksonville. I forgot last week who they beat, but it was Jacksonville in Jacksonville. An impressive win for Tennessee with all the injuries that they have, with the inconsistencies that they have so far in the young season. To win a game against a team who the week prior beat the Patriots at home. I know the Patriots are having their issues this season, but it's still an impressive win for Jacksonville a couple weeks ago, getting revenge against the team that knocked them out in the AFC title game last season. And then, of course, maybe they were coming off a big high off of that, an emotional high. It's hard. When you get up that much for one team, to win that game, and they do, the way they did against the Patriots the next week, you're bound to have a letdown. You see it all the time, and not just football, but in sports. You have a big game, an emotional game, particularly at home. You win that game, and then the next week it's, yeah. So, of course, the Titans, though, you give them credit. They won 9-6, a close, just a, not very good offensive game. The Titans do not have a lot of offensive firepower. I know they have Marcus Mariota. It's funny. Years ago when Chip Kelly was here, we were all saying, oh, Marcus Mariota could be an Eagle. Right? And, of course, that didn't happen. And years later, we have Carson Wentz. We have Doug Peterson as the coach. We win a Super Bowl. And of course, here we are now with Wentz going up against Mariota. And listen, he does not have a lot of offensive weapons. They just don't. They're receivers. We talk here in Philly about the Eagles receiving core, without any burner, without any stretch the field type of guy and this and that. The Titans really don't have a lot of weapons at the receiving position. And you take a look at that offense. They lost one of their best pass catchers for the past how many years in Delaney Walker, who's really a wide receiver playing tight end. For years, we talk about Zach Ertz here. Well, Delaney Walker's been a very good tight end for a number of years. And they're without him, and he's been one of their best offensive players. And, of course, Mariota's go-to guy. So they don't have him, and they've been struggling as an offense, for sure. And Mariota has a hand issue. He has trouble feeling the ball with the numbness or something. He's not going to beat you with his arm. He's not a bad passer. It's just, with that injury and whatnot. But the thing with Mariota, as we know, is his feet, is his legs, is his running ability, his scrambling ability. We know in Philly about scrambling quarterbacks over the years, right? And I remember years ago when Mike Vick was playing on the Falcons. And all the talk going into any game that you would play the Falcons is you got to keep Mike Vick under wraps. You can't break contain on Mike Vick. You have to have a spy, maybe 2 spies on him. And, the one thing you always worried about Mike Vick was his scrambling ability, was the fact that he could keep plays alive, was the fact that he could beat you, for a touchdown, running the ball. The same is true with Marcus Mariota. I know that he is a little hobbled. He's a little injured, but he's still very dangerous as a runner. And I know the Eagles are very good against the run. But I also remember last week they lost contain on one play for Andrew Luck, and he ran for like a 33-yard run at one point. Now, if that's Marcus Mariota, that could be going to the house. That could be a touchdown. So it's important for the Eagles to keep contained. I do believe they will spy. They will probably have a spy. Maybe it'll be Jordan Hicks on him, I would imagine. And you don't want to let him, break that type of contain the way they did. And I know it was only one play, but the way they broke contain for that one play against Andrew Luck for the big run, which was the longest run of the game by the Colts, by any of their players. The Eagles are very stout against the run. That's always going to be the case. Against the pass, you'd like to see them do a little better. And I know on the road, this defense doesn't play as ferociously as they do at home. And even though the Titans don't have a lot of weapons, it's not like a few weeks ago when they were playing Tampa Bay and you were going up against Djax and you were going up against Evans and O.J. Howard and all the weapons that team had, and Fitzpatrick playing above his head, and whatnot at that time. It's a different situation this week. You're going up against a not as explosive offense, but if you still allow any offense in this league to have time for the quarterback to survey the field, they're still going to be able to beat you. So the key for the Eagles' defense is, of course, keep Mariota in the pocket as best you can. Don't let him run around. But also get pressure on him. One of the things about this Eagles defensive line, and I said this a few weeks ago when they lost to Tampa Bay, I still want to see them get more pressure on the quarterback. And for more times than not, and I know they've made some big stops at key moments, like last week against the Colts in the red zone, and in week 1, of course, against the Falcons. But I would like to see them get more pressure on the quarterback. Look, this is too good a defensive line to have the sack numbers that they have, which isn't that great. I mean, they have made their stops. They have gotten their pressures. Fletcher Cox is still playing really well. I like the play of the young, Barnett, Derek Barnett. I think that they still have a very good defensive line. But I would like to see this D-line again impose their will. Again, this week you're going up against an offensive line that you should be able to dominate. And I've said this the past few weeks, and it really hasn't happened. Tennessee does have some injuries on their offensive line. They're not that good. And even I know they're playing at home, and sometimes the home team always gets up. And, of course, like I said before, you're playing against the Super Bowl champs. So they're going to be ready and up for this game, like every team who the Eagles are going to play. But this defensive line, this is a matchup where they have to win. They really should dominate Tennessee's offensive line. They really should. And I would love to see them do that for a full four quarters. Again, we haven't seen enough of it. We've seen it at times on certain drives, and then there's certain drives where they kind of disappear. And you don't really hear them that much. They're still stopping the run, which is great, but they're not getting that consistent pressure on the quarterbacks as we were accustomed to seeing a year ago, which was one of the strengths of this team last year. And this season, I think they're still very solid and very, talented on the D-line, but come on, guys, it's time to really show it for a full game, and hopefully this is the week they do it. I know you're going up against an elusive quarterback, a scrambling quarterback who can keep plays alive, but you got to be able to get pressure and sustain pressure on Marcus Mariota. He is their weapon. Make no mistake, Marcus Mariota is their offense. So if you can control him, you shouldn't have that big a problem winning the game. Offensively, look, again, you're going up against a pretty good defense. For whatever Tennessee is, they hit hard. They are a hard-nosed defense. They're playing at home. They're feeling confident coming off a big win on the road at Jacksonville a week ago where they held the Jags to only 6 points. On the road. So, it's not the easiest of defenses to beat, but the Eagles have more offensive weapons on their side of the ball than Tennessee does. And that, I kind of look at these two teams and I say this should be, and I say should be, a double-digit win for the Birds. I'm kind of calling for like a 24 or a 27 to 13 win. It should be a game that we can kind of sit back and relax a little bit, but we really haven't been able to do that this season, and at times it's because of the inconsistencies that this team has had. But this week, I think they do get back to it. I really do. I know they get some weapons back on offense, as I mentioned before, and I really think that this is the type of game that you can impose your will. even though it's on the road. And I know this team at times has struggled on the road. They're one of the best home teams in the league. And then on the road, they're still good. They still won their share of road games a year ago. But let's not forget, 2 of their losses last season came on the road at Kansas City and at Seattle. So they still have to kind of get that mentality, and I know sometimes it's hard when you're on the road, your home fans, you get pumped up when you're at home. When you're on the road, the good teams, though, still find a way, and this team still has, but you got to find that way to find that extra gear that you find when you're at home and then pose that will. Look, this is a better team than Tennessee. And I know Tennessee last year was a playoff team. They went to the second round, the divisional round, lost at New England. They won a road game at Kansas City in the wild card game, coming back to win that game on the road. They're a well-coached team. They have, again, Marcus Mariota. They have some good players on defense. I know they made some moves in the offseason. A lot of former Patriots on that team. But again, when you look at these two teams, and I know you can never say on paper because paper is only good for, you know what, but the Eagles have the superior team to Tennessee. And it's a good Titans team, but they're banged up. I know the Eagles are too, but they're banged up, and their quarterback still is getting back into the flow of it. So, and I know Wentz is too, but Mariota with the hand, Wentz, doesn't exactly have those issues. So I like the Eagles to win this game. I would like them to win their first comfortable win of the season, not one of those heart-in-the-throat games that we've had in week 1 and 3. Every game's been close so far. Every game's been well fought, and it's come down to the end. But I like the Eagles to kind of walk away with this one. Again, I'm calling for a double-digit win. I know there'll be a lot of Eagle fans. It'll be probably like just a bunch of Eagle fans. I know their old stadium. I remember their old stadium was called Adelphia Coliseum. I always thought that was interesting. But I know it was the brand name. But, I like to see, I'm pretty confident the Eagle fans are going to be in full throat, taking over that stadium. And, I think the Birds get a win. I really do. They were talking about this morning on the radio about last year, the Week 4 game when they went to L.A. to play the Chargers, and it was a home game. All those Eagle fans there. I don't know if it'd be exactly like that this week in Tennessee, but in Nashville. But I'm sure the Eagles Nation is going to be well represented at that game. And for all of you who are going, have a great time. Let's get a win. Let's see a win, and represent the midnight green as well as we know we always do. So that's basically my breakdown of the Eagles-Titans game. Again, I'm calling for a double-digit win. It should be a double-digit win. You never know. It's a week-to-week thing. I like the fact the Eagles are getting some of their offensive firepower back from injury. Of course, we got number 11 back last week. Starting to get some of his guys' familiarity, Alshon and Sproles and Ajayi. I mean, that's good. That certainly helps. But again, should be a double-digit win. I just want to touch on a few things. I know we talk about guys coming back. We lost another player. Rodney McLeod, of course, MCL out for the year. And I know they're putting, Graham in there at safety. I almost would like to see them move Jalen Mills from the outside corner position to safety and move Sidney Jones from the slot corner, which he's done pretty good. But moving back to his more familiar role as an outside corner, where he, I believe, could be a future shutdown corner in this league. And I'd like to see them put Rasul Douglas as the slot corner, put Jalen Mills at the other safety position, because I think Jalen could do better as a safety than he does on the outside as a corner. I mean, last week, look, 2 penalties, Every week it just seems to be something. Jalen Mills is almost like the Eagles' Adubel Herrera. He seems to make these, like, brain-dead plays from time to time. It's like, what are you doing, Jalen? What are you doing? It's like, is the dye from the green hair just getting into your head there? I mean, what are you doing? You get burned on double moves. You have penalties. It's just... He's the Eagles' Adubel Herrera. I mean, let's just call it like it is. But I still think he would be a good either slot corner or safety. And I would kind of like to see him move to safety. And I know they got a Graham in there, and they're going to try that out and see how that goes. He's a veteran. You know, he was on a Super Bowl team with the Ravens and, of course, with the Eagles last season. But again, I would like to see Jalen Mills in there at safety, put Rasul Douglas on the slot for corner, and move Sidney Jones to the outside where he should be playing. That's why they drafted Sidney Jones as an outside corner. I know he's athletic. He can play the slot. He's done okay at a slot corner so far this season, but I still would like them to see him be outside where he, you know, again, like I feel he could be a shutdown corner. And the Eagles really don't have that to this point, with all due respect to who they have in Darby and Mills, but I'd still like to see Sidney Jones on the outside. He's athletic. He's good at covering, more so than Jalen Mills is, and I think it's a move that might work. That being said, I also understand that there's a player out there who wears number 29, plays in Seattle, a player who many years ago, we remember Eagles Nation, we wanted him in the draft. And that player, of course, is Earl Thomas. And, of course, that year the Eagles drafted Brandon Graham, and there was some talk at that time that, they should have gotten Earl Thomas. And Brandon Graham, it took him a little while, to find himself in the NFL. I'm really glad that he has. He's been an asset here. He really has been. He made the biggest defensive play in the Super Bowl last season, as we remember, in February. And he certainly has come around as an NFL player. But that being said, there's a chance, and I know Earl Thomas has been, he wants to get traded from the Seahawks. I'm glad he didn't go to Dallas. I'm glad he made some plays against Dallas last week and bowed to the sideline. That was great. That was almost up there with T.O. T.O. on the star. You had the bow from Earl Thomas after that second interception. And he's not quite the player that he used to be, but he still is a playmaking safety, and we've seen that. He's made some plays so far this season. He still has some gas left in the tank. And, Howie is never, as we've learned in recent years, he's not opposed to making moves to better the team. We've seen this. We've seen this the last few years, of course, moving up the way they did and being aggressive to get Carson Wentz. And all the moves they made last offseason and the moves they made, during the season last year, getting Jay Ajayi from the Dolphins via trade. He's not afraid to make moves, and I like that. I did want them to get Josh Gordon. They didn't get Josh Gordon. I would have liked to have seen them get Josh Gordon. I can kind of understand why they didn't. There's a huge risk in getting a guy who, could be suspended again, a guy who hasn't been able to stay away from suspensions. You don't really have that in Earl Thomas. What you have in Earl Thomas is you have another leader, another guy who's won a Super Bowl, knows what it takes to win. You do have a former teammate of his here in Michael Bennett. I think it would be a good spot for Earl Thomas. I really do. And as much as I hate losing, Rodney McLeod, who's been a very good player here, if they can add Earl Thomas, to the safety position to go with Malcolm Jenkins, I just think that would be fantastic. And I think that's the right move. I think he fits their schemes. I think he would still make enough plays. He's not what he was, but he is still a very good safety in this league. He's still, as we've seen, a playmaking safety. And one of the problems this team has had has been getting turnovers. Defensively, they have 3 turnovers. The offensive have given up the ball 6 times. So this team has had their problems getting turnovers, and I know, look, all due respect to Mr. McLeod, but he's dropped a few interceptions that Earl Thomas may have been able to catch. So you get Earl Thomas to go with Malcolm Jenkins, again, a veteran tandem, that's for sure. They are, probably be amongst the oldest safeties in the league, but they still have some game, and they're both of them are playmaking safeties. And, again, Earl Thomas, another guy. And from last season, I mean, Howie and Joe Douglas, both of them seem to want to get guys that have won titles, that have been part of a championship team. Earl Thomas would be another one, to bring along. I don't think you would have to give up a whole lot to get him. Maybe a late pick. I say you do it. It's a position of need, for sure. They are getting a little thin in the secondary. And I think it would be the right move to make. So I'm hoping they make it. I don't know if they'll do it next week or the week. I don't know when they would do it, but that's a move that I definitely can see how he make. As much as, we were saying, will he do it for Josh Gordon? He didn't. He played it safe. Patriots got him. Eagles did not. But Earl Thomas is the type of player that I can definitely see Howie going after, particularly as a position of need at safety. And I know they're going to ride with Graham this week and see how that goes. But if I had my choice, I would definitely want Earl Thomas for sure. And we can stick it to those Dallas fans even more. And at the end of the day, you can do that. I don't know. We've been torturing them a whole lot these past few years. But anyhow, yeah, that's a move that I would like to see them to make. But another big hot topic move, of course, people were talking about all week long has been Le'Veon Bell. And I know, I'm another Eagles fan bringing up Le'Veon Bell. I know. Listen, I understand, unlike Earl Thomas, you would have to give up a lot to get Le'Veon Bell. I mean, you're talking about possible picks and player. You would have to give up a decent amount to get Le'Veon Bell. And I know that running back is a position that they're deep at. They're just getting Jay Ajayi and Darren Sproles back to go with Corey Clement, to go with Wendell Smallwood. The list goes on. There's a lot of running backs on this team. Running backs that, look, and they won a Super Bowl with running back by committee last season. And there really hasn't been a team. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I mean, the Patriots, for all the years they've won, they had Corey Dillon there for a while. LeGarrette Blount, of course, was there for a bit. But they've never had that, Le'Veon Bell-like running back, Adrian Peterson, Todd Gurley, type running back. Teams that win championships usually don't. It's just one of those weird things, I know it's a passing league, and that's part of the reason. And I know the Steelers haven't won a Super Bowl with Le'Veon Bell, or Antonio Brown for that matter, on their team. I get that. But I also know that Le'Veon Bell is a talent. And it's not exactly Le'Veon Bell's fault that the Steelers haven't won a Super Bowl. He has put up big-time numbers, even in the playoffs. Look, they lost to the Patriots. They're in the club of losing to the Patriots. Many teams have lost to the Patriots over the years in the playoffs or Super Bowl. Le'Veon is a playmaker. Okay, he is a top 3 player in the league. At his position. He is really, really good. And players like that don't always come along. When you have a chance to get a player like that, you make it happen. Listen, one of the mantras during the parade, besides Mr. Kelsey in that epic speech, was Doug Peterson saying this is the new norm. And the reason he said this is the new norm is that not that this team's going to win a Super Bowl every year, but that they are going to compete for a Super Bowl every year. That this is a front office that's not afraid to make moves to better the team when there's opportunities to better the team at different positions. It's being aggressive, not over aggressive, not to the point where you're going to give up your whole draft and and your future to do it. But you're still going to be aggressive. You're still going to look for ways to improve the team. Listen, this team had the best defensive line in the league last year, and what they did, they get Michael Bennett in the offseason. Okay, and I know Jernigan was hurt, and that's maybe part of the reason why they made the move. But they go out, they get Michael Bennett. They get another piece to a defensive line that was very good. Now I know they lost Bo Allen and Vinnie Curry, and that's part of the reason also why they brought in Michael Bennett. But something that was a position of strength they added to. Running back might not be a great weakness of this team right now. And you're saying, well, they have Jay Ajayi, they have Corey Clement, they have Darren, so they have a lot of guys. And last season they won a Super Bowl with LeGarrette Blount making plays, with Corey Clement making plays, right? You didn't have that big feature back, but you still won. And I understand that. I completely get it. Again, I've seen the Patriots win many championships without a great, running game. But I also understand what Le'Veon Bell is. And I understand that this team and this head coach and this ownership has told us that this is the new norm. And when you say that, you do have to back it up. And I'm not saying give up the draft for Le'Veon Bell. I'm not saying give up, 3 picks and, Brandon Graham and whoever else to get Le'Veon Bell. But if you have to give up you have 2 second-round picks. You have 2 of them. And if you have to give up one of them to get Le'Veon Bell, I'd be okay with that. As a fan, I see my team, my Eagles, making an aggressive move to get one of the best playmakers in the league on an offense that does need some playmakers. Let's not forget, even though they're getting guys back, This is still an offense that needs some more playmakers. To get Le'Veon Bell, you would have to give up something. I'd be okay with it. Now, I know people are saying, yeah, but he's been a locker room cancer. You know what? That term has been thrown around so many times with so many players. You know where that works? On a team where you can have a locker room cancer. This locker room has too much. I'm trying to make sure I word this correctly. Too much veteran leadership, too many leaders in this locker room to let one guy come in here and destroy it. Listen, this is a team that overcame so much last season. You talk about injuries to key positions. The league MVP got lost for the season last year, and they still won. And part of the reason why they won, yes, it was coaching. Yes, it was the talent. But the players, the leaders on this team made it happen. They wouldn't allow this team to lose. They wouldn't allow anything to get in their way, whether it was injuries or inconsistencies or the New England Patriots with Brady and the hoodie. They wouldn't allow anything to stop them from winning a championship. That's the mentality, and that mentality didn't change. Bringing in a Le'Veon Bell to this team is not going to hurt this team. It's not going to bring them down. It's not going to, put a fork in them and just end the whole thing. It will add to an offense that needs offensive skill players. They just do. And it will not fix the problem of them not having a stretch the field receiver, which they still, it would be nice if they had one. They don't. Getting Alshon Jeffrey back still, you don't get that. But what it does is it gives them a great playmaker and a player who's a home run hitter, which is something this offense does not have. With all the running backs they don't have that. They don't have a guy who's just going to break it and go. They have good running backs. They do, and I respect them, but they still don't have that home run hitter. And just an explosive playmaker like we had years ago when we had Shady McCoy. That type of back that can run, that can catch, they can do so many different things and beat you so many different ways. Not that Shady was, helped them win a Super Bowl, but you know what I mean. I mean, we haven't had that in a number of years. And when you have a franchise quarterback like Carson Wentz, you do want to surround him with weapons. They've done this with other quarterbacks and other teams. We see the complement of weapons that they gave Jared Goff with the Rams. We've seen now that the Vikings starting to put things together. Obviously, there's a lot of teams that have done this. Do they all win? No. But you see what these offenses are doing. I mean, I look at what the Rams are doing this season. I look at what the Chiefs are doing this season. I mean, weapons, speed, difference makers, playmakers. That's what you need. And it's a double-edged sword because this team did win last season without a Le'Veon Bell. They won the ultimate prize without Le'Veon Bell. I get that. But this is the new norm. It's doing what you have to do to make sure that you're still going to be that you're still going to compete for championships, plural, championships. You get Le'Veon Bell, you give him money, you keep him on the team for a number of years. You're still going to have one of the best running backs in the league, to go with one of the best quarterbacks in the league, to go with one of the best coaching staffs, front offices, what have you. I mean, this team has shown that they do what it takes to win. And bringing in Le'Veon Bell, I don't think would ruin this team. I don't think would ruin the franchise. And I understand you do have to pay number 11. I get that. But other teams have had to play different players, and they still compete. They still bring in other players. They pay them. The good GMs, the good front offices, they still make it work. You have multiple players you're paying big bucks to, but you're still competing. You're still winning. You just have to find a way to make the money work. And I believe Howie is one of those guys that can do it. If anyone can do it, it's Howie. So I still believe in Howie, and we must all put our faith in Howie if they go and get Le'Veon Bell and have to pay him and then have to pay Carson Wentz within the next year or so. But I believe they'll get it done. I believe in this team. I believe in the front office, and they've done nothing to this point in the past few years to make me feel otherwise. And I understand the fears and the concerns with people. Oh, Le'Veon Bell, look, he's not playing, and look at him, he's being a baby and everything. I know, but he's a talent. And let's not forget, and I'm not saying it's the same situation. I am not saying that this is the same situation because the Eagles won a Super Bowl and the Phillies have not won a championship since 2008, okay? But I look at what the Phillies season that's going to end in a couple days. And they had an opportunity this season at the trade deadline to bring in a top 5 player in the league via trade in Manny Machado. They chose not to do it. And the Phillies went backwards the rest of the season. Now, there's a lot more factors than just, not getting Manny Machado, which is why they failed the rest of the season. But not doing that when they had a chance to get a top 5 player just by making a trade to get him, it's part of the reason that caused their demise the rest of the season, in my opinion. The Eagles, I'm not saying it's the same situation. Even if the Eagles don't get Le'Veon Bell, they're still going to compete for a Super Bowl this season. I firmly believe that. But bringing in a Le'Veon Bell with the talent that you already have, I just think it's a move that I would do 10 out of 10 times. To stay on top, I'm going to do whatever I can to stay on top. Bring in players. I'm not worried, again, about locker room cancers because that does not exist on this team. Again, there is way too many leaders and leadership. The leadership group of this team will not allow one player to come here and ruin it. It just wouldn't do it. It wouldn't divide the team. It wouldn't do this. It wouldn't do that. This team is too strong for that. They were too strong for Josh Gordon. If Josh Gordon came here, he wouldn't have been a locker room cancer. If Le'Veon Bell comes here, he's not going to be a locker room cancer. Michael Bennett hasn't been a locker room cancer, okay? The leadership of this team is too strong to allow one guy to come here and ruin what they've already done. And let's face it, they won a Super Bowl. What's Le'Veon Bell going to say? Le'Veon Bell has yet to win a Super Bowl. This is a team, if he comes to, that he would come to with players who have a ring. And if Le'Veon ever does try to step out of place, they can say, hey, Le'Veon, you see this? You want this? You want one of these? So, I'm not worried as an Eagles fan that he would come here and become a big problem like he is on Team Drama in the Steelers. Because they have a lot of guys on that team who are just not mentally strong. They have guys that are, but it's like a me team, the Steelers. There's a lot of me guys on that team. It's not like that here. It's a different situation. No, all due respect to the Steelers. I mean, that organization has 6 rings. We're trying to work on 2. But that team has, the leadership in that team is not as strong as it is here. And, it's one of the reasons why the Eagles did what they did last season, because the leadership is just that strong to overcome obstacles. That's my 2 cents on the Le'Veon Bell situation. Do I think that they're going to get Le'Veon Bell? I honestly don't. I don't know if they're going to give up what it would take to get him. I understand all the baggage, all the background. I mean, look, they didn't go after Josh Gordon. And it's a different situation, but do I think Howie's going to make the move for Le'Veon Bell when they're deep at the running back position as is? No. I would like to see Le'Veon Bell here. I think that adds an explosive playmaker to this offense. That's something that this offense desperately needs. Not to say they can't win without. We saw it last season. But going forward, again, it's about staying on top. And when you're the team at the top of the mountain, everyone's coming for you. And these are the type of moves that at times you have to make to stay on top, to keep those other teams at bay. But we'll see. Hey, Howie's pulled magic before. So never say never with Howie in this front office. They are committed. This is the new norm, remember. They are committed to win and to win for multiple years, to not just allow that one title to be, okay, that's it, we're happy, And to their credit, they said all the right things this offseason, and I do believe in this front office. In closing here, and I know, again, I've gone over 30 minutes, I'm sorry, had a few topics to discuss. We have had some losses this week in the Eagles family. And you talk about 2 of the all-time greats, including a Pro Football Hall of Famer, a gentleman who I had the great pleasure of meeting some years ago in high school. Of course, Tommy McDonald passed away earlier in the week at the age of 84. I have his jersey here, the 1960 Mitchell & Ness jersey. And, excuse me, something fell on the floor that I wanted to show. So I have to go ahead and try to pick this up if I can reach it. I can't reach it. Don't get old, people. So let me get, there it is. All right. Whew. So this is a picture I actually got. This is a on a paper I actually got from Tommy years ago. This is him, of course, scoring the touchdown in the 1960 championship game. The Eagles, the only team in the history of the NFL to beat Vincent Lombardi in a championship game. Of course, that happened in 1960 in Philly at Franklin Field. And there's Tommy scoring the touchdown. Of course, it has the game score and everything, and it is signed by the great Tommy McDonald. I do want to still get this framed, and I will hope to do that. I also have somewhere a picture of myself with Tommy, and that's something that I want to get put up somewhere too. I kind of have to re-find it. I have it somewhere in a photo album because I had my picture taken with him those many years ago in high school. Of course, that's when I got that paper. And, just a great person. He always was just a guy that you always knew just lived a good life, was happy. And, when you talk about the Philadelphia fans and you talk about all the booing and this and that and the other thing, you talk about so many players who have come from different areas. And it's not just with the Eagles. This is with all the four sports. When you talk about players who retire and want to make their home in the Philadelphia area, and one of the reasons that they do that, they always say, is because of the people. The Philadelphia fans, the people in the city and the surrounding suburbs. And Tommy made a life here for himself and his family. And, I always remember those people who, loved to stick it to us before we won last year about how, they won 3 championships, but it didn't matter, the Super Bowl. You tell those players who played back then if it mattered or not. Tommy McDonald was always proud to wear that 1960 championship ring. It's nowhere near what you see the players get today with all the bling and the diamonds and everything. But he was proud of that ring. He was proud of winning that championship, doing so in front of the home fans at the old Franklin Field. That ring was one of his most cherished items. He wore it every day. He was happy to show it to people every day. He showed it to me. He would let other people wear it. It meant the world to him. And you talk about playing in an age, and I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but you talk about playing in an age where these guys had to work other jobs because they didn't get the money that you get today. They didn't have the benefits, the health benefits and such that you have today. These guys worked regular jobs. They played football because they loved to play the game. And these guys won or didn't win back then, and it meant everything to them. There was no Super Bowl back then, as we know. The Super Bowl came around years later. But Tommy McDonald and that group of players beat Vincent Lombardi in a championship. And I still think it's interesting. The last 2 championships the Eagles have won have been against Vince Lombardi and Bill Belichick. 2 of the all-time great coaches. Say what you want about Bill, but he's still one of the greats. And the Eagles beat both of them in their team history. They're the only team in football that can say they beat Vince Lombardi and Bill Belichick in a championship. That's pretty cool. That's pretty special. And those players, those championships before Super Bowls meant a lot. It meant something. And it was hard to win. You talk about one of the all-time great players in the history of the league, Dick Butkus, the Chicago Bears, never made the playoffs in his career. The Bears never made the playoffs. So you don't think it would have mattered something to him to make the playoffs and have a chance at a championship? Gale Sayers never won. I mean, you talk about some of the all-time greats, never won, never were in the playoffs. Those Eagles that won in 1960 against Vince Lombardi, it meant everything to them. And Tommy McDonald, proud as ever that he was part of that team. He was a great Eagle. He was a great human being, a Pro Football Hall of Famer. One of the all-time great induction speeches he gave and the chest bumps and everything. He gave us all chest bumps, too, that day. It was actually the year he was inducted to the Hall of Fame, so that was pretty cool. So Tommy will certainly be mixed. And today we lost Wes Hopkins. And I have his jersey. I actually picked this one up last year, the 1992 jersey, Mitchell and Ness. And Wes, of course, was a great Eagle for many years, patrolling the secondary, hard hitter. Again, 2 great Eagles. You talk about, another player who, gave it all, to play to wear the Eagles green. And, two great Eagles, two great football players, and we lost both of them this week. So it's been a bit of a tough week, of course, for the Eagles and Eagles Nation, the Eagles family, of course, for Tommy and Wes passing away. Maybe the Eagles get a win for these guys. I'm sure both of them would be up there watching, from their skyboxes up there now. And, much respect and condolences to the families and the friends of Tommy McDonald and Wes Hopkins. And that's going to be it. That's my closing for this vid. As always, let's go Birds. Let's get a win in Tennessee to go to 3-1 on the young season, and then a big one again next week as the Eagles host the Vikings in a rematch of the NFC title game right here in Philly. The Vikings will have some extra rest for this game, so pretty big game coming up after this week, but we have a game to go before that, of course, at Tennessee. So as always, let's go Birds, and I will see you all after the game with some post-game analysis, as I always do, and let's get a victory. Let's get a victory, Birds. All right, I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.